Hey all, Michael, Black Snow Comics here. It's been a while since I've drawn something on video, so I thought I would draw something for you. I'm going to be working on one of my comic strips today. This is for an upcoming comic, so you'll get a little preview of that. So what I have here is, this is Clip Studio Paint, which is what I usually draw on now. Sometimes I still use Photoshop as well. But this is what I've been primarily using for my digital drawing. And this is for Optimistically Cynical. I'm going to draw a 3-panel here. This comic doesn't really have much of a format. I pick and choose how many panels I want. I created a number of templates based on basically just whatever the joke is I want to tell and how long that's going to be. And you see I've already written it out. I've got words here. My template already has like my header. I already have it, so I have a number of panels to choose from. I've already got a place to add my word balloons and stuff like that. So I'll just show you kind of how I do it. So what I usually do is I have this panel twice. One is kind of a higher up layer that is going to be above the word balloons and stuff. The other one's the one I'm actually going to draw in. And the reason I like to do this is because it makes it easier to color stuff in at the end. Because when I draw, it's going to go right up to the border. So, let's see. So here we're going to have Kingston talking to Philo. And these are characters I've drawn hundreds of times at this point. But still, you can see, it takes me a while to get their heads the way I want them. So no matter how much you draw, I think usually I'm not this bad. Being on camera's got me a little flustered with it. Okay, here we go. So let's zoom in a little here. So I like to start with Philo's, or this is Kingston. I like to start with this head and get his hat. And right now I'm just using just the G pen tool is what I like to use. And since they're characters I've drawn so many times at this point, it's pretty easy and comfortable to do. You don't really have to put as much thought into it as a character that you haven't really worked with as much. And since it's a comic strip versus a book, they're usually fairly static images, so it makes it easier as well. And for them, I like to do the pupilless eyes. I just kind of go with the white kind of circle, kind of a flash style. And what I'm doing right now, these are all my outer lines. So I'll come back in and do details on another layer after. And the reason I do that is because it makes it very easy to fill in the colors. And then the other lines won't interfere. So he's asking a question here, so let's zoom out a little. Now we need to get Philo standing over here, looking at him. And we'll give him his usual kind of unhappy, negative look. And what I've been doing lately is drawing a lot of these in advance, so this comic you're looking at now actually won't be seen until I think this one's going to be for the first Sunday in June. So I'm getting pretty far. So let's see here. We'll give him just kind of a... And as you can see, I like to use the undo button pretty liberally as I go. Sometimes it's a little better than this. I wish I got the idea to record one of these right after I just finished another one. It was a single panel, and that one was like flawless and easy and went really quick. which would have probably been a better demonstration, but I didn't think about doing this until after. So you get what you get and you don't throw a fit, as my daughter likes to say. Okay, so that's pretty good for his basic stuff for now. Then we'll do the we'll go ahead and we'll do the detail lines on this panel right now. So what I've just done is select a layer one above. So I have one that's my panels copy, and this one I just call lines. You call them whatever you want. And I'm not saying this is like the correct way to do anything. This is just the way I do it. So works for me. You do what works for you. If you're looking for something, you could try it this way. So this is basically like more of your details. And this is usually more fun than getting kind of those outer lines. This is where you could do a little more with it. And this is typically where I do like if it's on comics, usually I have another layer beyond this that's just for like shadows and stuff, but for this it's just the same layer because the shading's not that complex. Usually I just want to add enough to get a little depth and show a little detail, but these are clearly supposed to be like 2D characters, so I'm not really trying to create the illusion of depth as much as I would with something like a comic book. And one of the reasons that I like doing this comic is because I can draw it pretty quickly. That was by design. I wanted it to be something not that complex. Sometimes I try to challenge it a little and add more to what they're actually doing than what's necessary for the joke. For this one, it's going to be pretty basic. They're just talking and standing, so it'll be easier. One hard thing with him is his hair. I used to have 5 strands of hair until recently. I just decided to go with 4 just because it's hard to keep it out of his eyes, and I don't really like drawing it in his eyes all that much. We'll give him kind of a bored look. Add a little shadowing under some of his strands of hair here to add a little something to it. We'll give him a little bit under his ear too, since he's got pretty big ears, which he didn't always have. If you've read the comic since I started it, that was something that I kind of did when I revamped it, changed the look up. Oh, let's give him some shading on his hood there too. Okay, so now let's do these 2 panels. So these 2 are just going to be close-ups on Philo responding. So what he's asked him here is, what would you do if you knew the world would end tomorrow? So we're gonna do we'll do kind of a closer shot of him here, and then for this one we'll do it a little farther. Okay, so let's start with his eyes. I like to start with his eyes usually. So it just kind of depends what you're doing. So like as you saw here, I start with this head shape and then the top of the hat. For him, I always start with the eyes. I don't know why. It's just what I've kind of done. So I want him to look kind of sad here because he's saying something kind of sad. So we'll give him those eyes. And I've gone back to the panel layer since these are kind of the outer lines right now. And for him, since he's got a big nose, I put these lines in. I'm going to make it white like a shine and then black on the sides. But if you notice, for Kingston, I did not do that. I just did that on the top layer just because it's harder to select his nose. So I just use other lines on there. So we want him to look kind of sad. And the nice thing with comics, especially the way they are now, is there's definitely no right or wrong. You just kind of do what you do, and since there's not as much of a, it's not like unless you're going through like an editor at a newspaper or something, there's not going to be that much of people dictating to you what you do if you're just doing it for yourself on the internet. Occasionally there'll be stuff like Comixology didn't like one of the fonts that I like to use and preferred me to use a more professional font, so I had to change the font before I could get one of my comics up there. I've had to change the format from usually I like to draw in RGB, but I've had to change to the other coloring format to submit, I think it was to Comixology, something like that. But those aren't really big deals. Those are kind of... Yeah, let's do this again. Make sure his ears are a good size. Too big, too small. Oh, this would throw me off too, because I usually... So I kind of... When it's this angle, I show the bottom of the ear covering that, and then this angle, I like to have the ear going back behind the head. And I mean, that's just kind of preference for what I think looks good. And that comes from just drawing this basically, like I said, hundreds of times at this point. So now I'm going to do a farther shot. Actually, I'll do a shot of both of them again. So I'll start with him. I'll start with him being Philo. So I'll go back to his kind of more bored, angry look, because he's being kind of sarcastic or maybe sardonic here. Yeah, let's do the ear first this time. There we go. And with that undo button, it's very easy to kind of second guess yourself. That's one of the differences between drawing digitally and traditionally, is that undo button makes it very tempting to keep redoing till you think you've gotten it perfect. Sometimes you just gotta kind of press on though. Okay, so then we're gonna put Kingston over here, and one thing to remember is the relationship in size between the two. So he's taller and skinnier. Is that... Yeah, we'll do one more. For whatever reason, I'm just not nailing his head shape at the moment. Maybe it's nerves from being on camera. So I like to start with his hat, like that. You get his ear. And as you draw something over and over, I think it's only natural that you kind of come up with your little tricks and preferences and stuff. So, uncharacteristic of Kingston most of the time, I'm going to give him kind of annoyed eyes as well, because he realizes that he's not getting a very good answer. Okay, so now I'm going to select that other layer and add some of those details. Like I said, a lot of how you do this comes out of repetition and learning what makes it easier for you and what you like. Like a lot of mine, like I said, is based out of knowing how I'm going to be coloring these things in and how much work it can take to color in versus doing it really quickly and easily, and which one I prefer. I wouldn't say I'm a lazy artist, but I am a practical artist, and if I have ways to kind of make things a little easier, I'll use them. So that looks pretty good. And like you could probably see, I like to go kind of quickly. I'm not putting a ton of I'll redo it, but it's not like this is the end all be all of what I've drawn. This is just and I don't want it to I want it to come off kind of more lighthearted and fun and spontaneous when you look at it, and I think part of that comes through in the way you draw it, because if you're sitting there spending hours and hours on it, it's gonna have a different look than if you're whipping it up quickly with like quick pen strokes, and I kind of want that to come through. One of my favorite musics is punk rock. I've liked it since I guess middle school, which has been a while, and I like to try to think of my drawing sometimes in terms of punk and kind of the energy and the spontaneity you get from punk. I try to work in more successfully than sometimes than others. And sometimes, like right here, what I just did, I kind of didn't line it up the way I wanted, but then I saw a way to kind of play off it and add to it, which that's kind of what I'm saying is it's not super well parts of it are planned out, like I'm talking about how I want to color it, make that easier. I want to be able to improvise quite a bit as well. Like I wasn't planning on putting Kingston in the thing, but then I thought, well, that'll make it funnier. So now that part's pretty much done. Give it once, look over once. I think it looks good. So let's start coloring it. So we'll go back to one of my previous comics and grab the colors from there. So we'll start with the background, then we'll get Philo's tone. So I have a layer dedicated solely to background here. So let's fill that real quick. And this is the color I picked for this comic. It's my go-to background unless there's a specific reason to have another color. I'm not usually trying to depict realistic backgrounds in this comic. Occasionally I do, but when I'm not, I'll just go for colors or things to try to create a feel sometimes. So sometimes I'll change the color based on the feel of what I'm doing and try to get kind of expressionistic with it. So right now I have a layer that I've already set up for my word balloons, and this layer has I don't know what it's called on here, but on Photoshop it's called a stroke. So basically anything I put in this layer is going to have a black line around it, so instantly it makes this line around the word bubbles. And then I was just using the elliptic select tool. Now I'm using the lasso, and I'll do kind of the pointing of the word balloons, and I just am filling them. And you could do this the same way in Photoshop. Okay, so now let's fill in for Philo's color. And this is what I was talking about before. Now I was able to just select really quickly, go to my colors one, which is a layer underneath the drawing one, and I'll go to select, expand selected area, and you only need like 2-3 pixels. Then fill it, and it looks good. So it's a fast way to color. So sometimes with my Mac, it doesn't hold my selection well when I'm trying to hold it down. So now let's try to get everywhere that's going to be white. And sometimes I miss them, I have to go back, but it's no big deal. Okay, so that should be good. Let's expand those. Select white. Let's fill it. There we go. Real quick, let's do his nose for the black areas. And we'll go back, grab some more colors. I also have some hidden layers where I have these colors, so I don't technically need to be like referring to an old comic. I have them in this section, color palettes, that's hidden right now. But if I have already another one open, it's easier to just refer to that. And I like to keep the colors consistent, so that's why I do that. Unless there's something in that particular comic about lighting. And usually with my comic strips, lighting is not a big deal unless like it's set at night or some particular reason why it would be a big deal. I did just draw one where they were in silhouette at sunset, so for that it was important to the joke that I was trying to tell, so there are times where the lighting would be more important. So right now I'm just going back, grabbing 2 colors at a time since that's all I can hold, and then going through and selecting where they're gonna go, going through the same thing of expanding it and then filling it. There's a fill shortcut. I don't think there's an expand shortcut, but it's easy enough for me to just go to the menu. So from here it's just kind of rinse and repeat whatever colors I didn't get yet. So we'll go for their mouths. And to make things a little easier, I just decided to give them the same kind of tone of red in their mouths. I used to give them each character like their own particular shade, but I don't think it really added that much, so I just decided to kind of drop that at some point. So here's a spot I missed where there's some white, so we'll get that real quick. So we're almost done. It's looking pretty solid here. Let's grab Philo's jacket and his shirt. Well, his, I guess, sweater vest. So we'll start with that, make that green. Then let's do the gray. Normally I'd be listening to music or something now, but I don't feel like getting a copyright strike from YouTube, so I'm not. Okay, so we got, looks pretty good. Let's break it up a little with something in the background just so it's not so solid. Sometimes I'll put a darker shade of this yellow, and sometimes I like to just throw a solid black, usually towards the top. I think that looks pretty nice. It's not super common. Let's see how that would look here. See, it adds a little something to it. It's nothing like mind-blowing or anything, but I like it. Let's add a little darker. I do have a color for this, but do I have it here? No, so I don't really feel like. I'll just, that one I'm not as particular about keeping it the same. So we'll put that back here to break things up a little. And then I want it up here. This isn't like it's supposed to represent anything real. This is more of a, to create a mood. So I can just kind of place it wherever I want. If I was trying to like indicate that this was a particular place, I would be a little more refined with what I was doing there. So that's basically it. Let's take a look close up. See if there's anything I need to fix. Sometimes you see things after you've added the colors that you don't see. Yeah, looks fine. So there you go. That is what it looks like when I draw comics, and that is it. So I hope you enjoyed. Let me know if you have any questions or if you want me to do more of this. If you have your own way of doing it that you think I'd appreciate knowing about, let me know in the comments. I'm always trying to get better and learn from other people, so yeah. From here I just save it as a JPEG, I upload it and get it scheduled. Alright, until next time.